Hello, good afternoon. This is Peter Schmitting speaking. Welcome to the second webinar to the final InterCor TESTFEST on cross-border interoperability. It's 3 minutes past 2, so we are already a little bit late. I see we have more than 30 attendees and a good dozen panelists. So let's start directly. Next slide, please.
Wait a minute, I'm just changing something. Might lead to
a little technical problem.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So I'll do the introduction. I'll do that very fast because the technical bits are probably more interesting to everybody. So as I said, I'm Peter Schmitting. I'm working for InterCor. In this project, I'm the activity leader on the TESTFEST activity. Then we have our speakers, Peter Louilly, who is from I don't know how to pronounce that, basically from Flanders. He's the project manager for this TESTFEST. Then we have Axel Sandbergen from Rijkswaterstaat. He is the test manager for the Dutch test site. Then we have Öne Kerstjens, who does the same for North Brabant. We have Guillaume Richard, who is going to talk about PKI. He is from IDnomic. And then the other names are only interesting for the people that will stay for the internal InterCor webinar, which will be later. So let's go to the next slide, please. So in this webinar, we are going to have the same rules as everywhere. All participants are muted. However, you can ask questions. You do that with the questions part, which you should see on the panel of the webinar. And I will collect these questions and interrupt the presentations from time to time to answer them. And if you do a question, please add the number of the slide, which you find on the right-hand top of each slide. The whole webinar is recorded, and the recorded webinar and the webinar itself, the slides, will be put onto the InterCor website. Also, we will, if we get a lot of questions, we will collect them and put them into a document format and put them to the InterCor website also. So next slide, please. Good. What will be in the webinar? There will be the introduction from me, which has already started. Then there are the overall TESTFEST objectives, which will be presented by another Peter, by Peter Louilly. Then we have information on the pilot sites and the services. Testing is going to take place in Belgium and the Netherlands. There will be speakers from Belgium and the Netherlands. Then you will hear about the security specifications and the IF2 interface, again by Peter and Guillaume Richard. Then something about the program of the whole event, the venue, and on the conference that is planned for the Thursday of the TESTFEST week. I will talk a little bit about expected outcome and follow-up, which is very short. And then afterwards, for the InterCor partners, we have a second webinar where we talk about our pre-testing week from March 15 to 22. So next slide. So that's my name. Just very quick, if there's anybody who does not know about the InterCor project, it's basically a study on from 4 member states, which are also in the 10T core road network. And this is connecting from the North Sea to the Mediterranean. And you can see 4 countries, the UK, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands are involved in that project. It's a CEF project. CEF is Connecting Europe Facility. The whole project started in September 2016 and should end of August 2019. But at the moment, we are negotiating for a little extension, so we probably run into 2020. The overall budget has 30 million euros with a 50% funding from the European Union. Altogether, there are 16 partners from the 4 member states, and each country there's a coordinator. In the Netherlands, it's the Dutch Ministry of Infrastructure and the Environment, which is also overall project coordinator. In France, it's the French Ministry of Ecology, Sustainable Development and Energy. And in Belgium, we have the Flemish Department of Mobility and Public Works. And in the UK, the Department of Transport. And each of the member states is running a pilot site where the CITS services are deployed. So, next slide, please. So the objective of InterCor is to streamline and pilot selected day one services in the 4 member states, of course, on the pilot sites, and to have a look at of services on freight and logistics, and all that built on a common hybrid communication architecture that is using ITS G5 and cellular networks. And for the day one services, we have in-vehicle signage, probe data, roadworks warning, and closer. And then in freight on logistics, there will be some trials on truck parking and multimodal cargo transport optimization. So the next slide, please. And now to the TESTFEST. This TESTFEST is the last one in a whole series of TESTFESTs. There was a first TESTFEST in July 2017, from July 3 to 6 in Dordrecht, which focused on ITS G5. And the Dordrecht site will also be part of this last TESTFEST. Then we had a TESTFEST focusing on PKI in April 2018 in Reims. Then we had a hybrid TESTFEST where we tested on cellular and ITS G5. That was in October 2018 in the UK, in Chatham. And in preparation to this hybrid TESTFEST, we had a pre-TESTFEST in June in the Netherlands, in Helmond, where we already looked at closer delivered via ITS G5 and cellular. And now the topic of this webinar is the cross-border interoperability TESTFEST, which will take place in March 2019 from 25 to 28 in and around Antwerp and a little bit in the Netherlands. And before that, in the week before, we will have some InterCor partner-only event in the UK, in France, in the week from 18 to 22. So I guess that's basically all I needed to say. So I hand over to Peter Louilly, who will fill you in about all the technical details of this event. So Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, Peter. My name is Peter Louilly. I work with the Agency for Roads and Traffic in Flanders. The main objective of our final InterCor TESTFEST is to validate the cross-border interoperability of the day one services we deployed in the 4 member states, mainly being roadworks warning, in-vehicle signage, glossa, and probe vehicle data. That means that we will drive vehicles of the 4 member states in all of the 4 each other's countries. We will test infrastructure to vehicle and vehicle to infrastructure communications over ITS G5 communication channel and a cellular IP-based communication channel. To do that, we will use both real and simulated services distributed directly into the vehicles and also collect the data from the participating vehicles, being PVD, probe vehicle data. We will investigate and assess the performance of those communication technologies, and we will use the findings to support European harmonization of the CITS technology, as we are doing within C-roads, for example. Now we go to the pilot sites and the specifications themselves. It will be me, Axel, and Une from Flanders and from the Netherlands. The pilot sites are located, our pilot sites are near Antwerp, and the pilot sites from the Netherlands is near Dordrecht and near Helmond. The pilot services in Flanders are the roadworks warning, being the use cases lane closure and other restrictions, and alert planned roadworks for mobile roadworks. In vehicle signage, we deploy dynamic speed limit information and dynamic lane management and lane status information. For PVD, we do vehicle data collection and event data collection. And for Glossa, we do 2 test sites with time to green information and time to red information. All both on the hybrid communication method with both ITSG5 and cellular IP-based communication over our interface 2, over which later more. As said, our pilot site is near Antwerp. It consists of a stretch of the E313 and the E34 highways towards Eindhoven. And the Glossa site is on the N12 in Schelde. The ITSG5 communication channel on the E313 and E34 highways consists of 25 ITSG5 roadside units, which are mounted on gantries and lightning poles. It covers this region where we have the green region, which delivers both in-vehicle signage and roadworks warning, and the purple part delivering only the roadworks warning service. The yellow part is the Glossa part, with 2 roadside units also delivering the service over ITSG5. Our interface 2, being the IP-based interface, covers all Flemish motorways and will also distribute our messages or Glossa messages from Schelde. We consider 2 kinds of scenarios. The first kind of scenarios is mainly for third-party participants for testing purposes. We will publish scenarios to do scenario testing on the first part of the pilot sites, which means that participants will know the scenarios up front and know what to expect. On the other hand, for validation purposes, on the second part of the pilot site, we will run scenarios unknown to participants and only known to ourselves, just to be able to make a comparison between what is expected and what is the actual result. The scenarios on the E313, E34 motorway are, as said, dynamic speed limits and lane status information. In the weeks up to the TESTFEST, the information should match our actual lane signaling panels. So if you do tests, pre-tests on our motorway, it should match the signaling itself. So you can, if you do some tests, you can check whether there are any problems on your side or our side. I have to mention there still are some issues. Later more about that. Our roadworks scenarios will consist of either virtual scenarios or impact protection vehicles on the hard shoulder or on our peak lane. We will also have a scenario to do a PKI test with an untrusted RCA. Also a bit more about that by Guillaume later. Here you have an example of a possible scenario on the E313 highway between, here at the bottom is Antwerp, and at the top it's Randst, being where the highway E313 splits towards the E34. Here you see the split to Eindhoven and the split going forward towards Luik. You see examples of what could be an actual scenario. The actual scenario during the TESTFEST will be a combination of actual live signs and superimposed simulated signs, just to have certain cases that match the things we want to test. Basically, the first part, starting from Antwerp to the first roundabout, will be the part that participants know what to expect, and the second part will be the unknown part, just known to Flanders only. I should perhaps mention that when I mean that live signs, that means that the actual sign can change with about a frequency of, at the moment, it's about 10 seconds that there could be a change. But we will try to get the frequency a bit faster by the time that the actual service has to be delivered on the TESTFEST. Here is the trajectory from the hotel where the venue is to the end of the last, where the last antenna is. It's about 16 to 26 minutes, depending on the traffic situation. We also
sorry to interrupt you. I had a question here. I think that would fit in now. It's from Sven Merriwert, and it reads: will all 5G beacons between successive VMS panels display the same IVS info? For example, 70 kilometers per hour. That is to say, are there locations where there are more beacons deployed than there are VMS locations?
If there are more beacons deployed than in a how do you say, denser space, normally they should send the same information. Is that an answer, or how should I interpret the question?
Well, that no, the answer is that is okay, thank you. So I guess you answered the question all right.
Okay.
You also from my side.
Somehow I didn't see the question. Strange. Okay. Starting from leaving the E34, we can make a small detour towards our N12 Glossa site. That consists of 2 signalized intersections, basically 3-way intersections, which will run scenarios which are still to be confirmed, because due to the unavailability of actual reliable prediction, the likely time will be set to max end time always. During a regular scenario, that means that the very dynamic timing causes the likely time not to be reliable. Hence, our confidence will be 0. But during the TESTFEST, we attempt to make the scenario a bit more rigid, so that the timings are rigid and that the likely time should become fairly reliable. But due to the implementation, our message will still say that it's not very reliable. That change to make it more rigid will be only during specific hours during the TESTFEST. So if anybody would be testing up front or afterwards, that would mean that the likely time will not be reliable at that time. Starting from our venue in Antwerp, we can cross. Oh, we will cross over into the Netherlands towards Dordrecht, which is about an hour and a half drive, depending on whether we make a detour next to through the Glossa site and our test site or not. And we can also make cross the border towards the Helmond campus, which takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours drive, also depending on whether you take a detour or not. Okay, now I give the, I still have to say that at the moment, pre-testing is possible on the E313, E34 pilot site. However, at the moment, there are still some issues with lane numbering and, as said, the update frequency for the lane signaling. Our roadworks warning still has some issues, and some ITS-G5 antennas are currently offline. I guess those are some firewall issues involved. Our interface 2 server, IP-based service provisioning is currently infrastructure to vehicle read-only, but I'm confident that we will get those issues all sorted out in the coming weeks. Our Glossa test site in Schelde at the N12 is expected to be operational starting the 11th of March. Okay, then I hand over the presentation to the Netherlands.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead, Axel.
Yeah. Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Now you're muted. Now you're not. Go ahead.
Well, maybe I take the opportunity to, there was another question from Sven. I don't know. I know from Bastian Wiesing. It's related to slide 20. The scenario on the E313. Is there also a list available with the ISO codes that are used for the different traffic signs in order for us to implement the correct icons in our HMI? I guess this is a question to.
I think the ISO code should be in the milestone 6 document. Axel, now you're muted. I can unmute you. Now you're unmuted now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. That's good.
Go ahead.
Can you do the next slide?
Yes, of course.
Okay, the slides we have here are basically the same as in the first webinar. We have no additional information, but I'll go through them. The trajectory is the same as what we used in our first TESTFEST. Motorway A16, Dordrecht, Rotterdam, north as well as southbound. And it also includes a tunnel, which is actually quite interesting for people to test on. So I would always advise people to really do that, because the tunnel, it gives a very specific, interesting traffic situation, which is difficult for onboard units to handle. Okay, next slide. This is a view of the trajectory from Rotterdam to Dordrecht and back, and also a photograph of the road, where you can see that it's quite a busy stretch, a multi-lane situation, which can be quite congested. So it's very much representative of a real life complex traffic situation. Next one. So real life highway setting, as I said, we also have a hybrid system. Everything we do is simultaneously broadcasted on ITST5 and on cellular. We have 13 roadside units. I have 2 connection. Une will further on explain that he's the contact person for anyone who wants to attach to that. Actually, everything is operational at the moment, so anyone wanting to test can just drive along the road and the signs are up. We have PKI installed, version 1.2.1. We have roadwork warning and IVS and probe vehicle data, of course. We also have some additional condition risk warning messages, which are not really in scope of InterCor, but which we use for ourselves, but people can pick them up if they want to. Denims and IVIs, and we will only use virtual scenarios because if people come to the Netherlands and they will not be there probably in rush hour, it may be that the matrix signs will not show anything, so that would be a shame for the testing. So we will only use virtual tests in this case. And we will also, as Peter Lewilly also has, provide one beacon that has a revoked AA, which is a specific PKI test. The next one. This is an example of the virtual scenarios. You see a roadworks with gantry and also with the trailer on the right-hand side. So that's the sort of scenarios you'll be encountering. Next one. Yeah, the contacts, myself and Edwin van der Wal, our technical manager. You can always contact us if you want any further information. We'll be happy to oblige anyone who wants to come testing or has any questions. I think that's it.
Axel, did you have extra slides prepared?
No, not at this point, no.
Okay, thank you. Une, you are muted. Yes.
Yeah. Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Peter, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Good, excellent, thanks. So good afternoon to everybody. Actually, my brief presentation will be very similar as the one that I gave during the first webinar. There was a minor update on what exact beacons will be in use for the final TESTFEST of the GLOSA service in the Helmond area in the Netherlands. So here you can see it on the slide. We indicated also the numbers and we provided a small legenda. It will be the GLOSA service that will be broadcast, so the spot and the map messages on the Heeklaan and the Engelseweg. So that's similar as in the information that I provided last time. The small difference is that it is one beacon is not operational and 2 new ones are operational, but it is on the same stretch of road. Actually, what might be confusing is the following. This slide that you see says Heeklaan, it's ITSG5 and Interface 2, so it's fully hybrid. But it is also applicable for the Engelseweg, which is also fully hybrid. So there's no difference. In terms of service level, but it's important. Yeah, no worries. But it is important that you can find what exact beacons will be operational and what beacons will not be operational. So this update is for that reason important. Yes, you can go to the next slide, Peter. Thank you. So the automotive campus is quite nearby. So if you are coming from abroad or Belgium, perhaps it might be convenient indeed to first drive to the automotive campus, which is a large parking place, and which also allows you to pre-meet a few colleagues if you wish. But of course, it's also free to directly drive over the test stretch. This slide provides you with the address of the automotive campus for which you on which you will be welcome. I'm not sure if there is a next slide, Peter, but
No.
I should say something about the contact details. So for further questions, you can contact me. And as my colleague Axel just from Rijkswaterstaat just already mentioned, if you wish to have access for the fully hybrid service to the cloud interface 2, then you can also go through me, and I can bring you in contact with our supplier who is able to connect you. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
This is Peter again. There was again a question related to slide 32. Is the PKI server running online, and is it accessible, or was the PKI simulated during testing? It's a question of Hussein Yalas.
I think when it comes to PKI that we now have a section about PKI, or is it specific about a specific country?
It's about slide 32.
Check which slide that is. Is this slide 32? Let me see. 31. I'm checking the question. Oh, hi. Trying to find the question. It's very
The
small
question
print.
is the PKI server running online, and is it accessible, or was the PKI simulated during testing? I think maybe really we come to that during the part that Guillaume is going to present.
Yes, that was the part which is immediately following.
Yeah, so you have to wait a little bit, Hussein. You will get the information in a moment, and if it's not sufficient, just ask again.
Guillaume, could you please? No, it's the specification, the baseline specifications. At the moment, the documents should be published on the InterCor website. The presentation, which will also be published, has the link. Basically, it consists of several InterCor milestone documents, being milestone 3, bringing a common set of upgraded ITSG5 specifications, which also includes our wish list for CAM content, CAM data elements. This specification also refers to the map profile, separate SPAT profile, and an addendum SPAT profile documents. The milestone 4 gives a specification of our IP-based communications channel. Our milestone 5 gives a set of specifications for our PKI and a certificate policy. I must add that this milestone 5 refers to the scoop document, which is still to be added on the final TESTFEST page of the InterCor website. I can add that any document about the scoop specifications is actually the same one as to be found at the PKI TESTFEST page. Then we also have the milestone 6, which gives functional descriptions of our services, together with some links of which field is to be used in which way for which service, amongst which also the ISO codes for the signs for IVI. Within InterCor, we also agreed on a common log format to be able to do common evaluation. Its description is version 0.7.7, also available on our website. Here you see how to get to the technical specifications. You go to TESTFEST, then you click on Cross-Border Interoperability TESTFEST, and there you find the technical specifications presented. Any part which is not there and will be added later, you might also find on the PKI Security TESTFEST or the Glossa pre-TESTFEST. For the ones that had joined webinar 1, we added this slide saying that during the TESTFEST, we will ask all participants to use a TESTFEST application to help logging which signs or which messages are received where. It creates a kind of basic logging. The application registers the location, a kind of track and trace of the participant vehicle, where the user manually selects the message when their HMI presents a certain message. A user will have to deselect the message when it's not presented anymore. And the reason that we will use this app is so that we can have preliminary results on a quick basis, so we can give quick feedback and results during the conference. This also eliminates the, how do you say, barrier of having to implement the InterCor common logging format by third parties. Of course, we very much would like to have third parties implement the InterCor common logging format, but we understand that it's not an easy thing to do, so that this basic logging is, how do you say, the minimum level that we expect. Guillaume, could you tell us something more about the PKI architecture? Guillaume? Guillaume doesn't seem to react at the moment, so I'll present it.
He says he cannot unmute himself, so maybe we have to unmute him.
No, he was self-muted. He should. Guillaume, could you unmute yourself? No problem. I'll present the slides then. Basically, our PKI architecture consists of a root server, root certificate server by each member state. So each member state has their own PKI infrastructure, consisting of a root CA, an enrollment authority, and an authentication authority. There's France, Flanders, the Netherlands, and the UK. And we also have the possibility that third parties have their own PKI infrastructure that they want to use. To make all those different PKI systems interact with each other, we created a common certificate trust list, the common CTL, and we will also create a common revocation list. All
Hello.
these.
Yeah.
Guillaume,
Oh,
welcome.
sorry. No, but go ahead if you want.
No, go ahead. Please take over. You can explain it so much better than me.
No, but actually, what we provide is the PKI elements to ensure the interoperability of all the messages exchanged. So this interoperability is based on two things. The first thing is what we call the common CTL. So this is basically a trust list with all the RCAs that are trusted for the TESTFEST. So meaning all the 4 member states and the third parties root CAs. And we also provide a common CRL, which is basically the aggregation of all the CRLs of those root CAs. So this is put on a common distribution center. This is signed by what we call the TLM, but TLM is actually not a term for this version of the standard, but anyway, this is a so-called TLM. So those two elements are signed by the TLM. And for participants who need it, we also put on this distribution center the AA certificates, because the standards normally ensures that if the stations doesn't have the AA certificates, normally the other station communicating with the station is supposed to provide this AA certificate. But anyway, for those who will not have implemented that, we provide the AA certificates on the distribution center. Also, for those who need the CRLs, the individual CRLs of the root CAs, we also provide the root CAs on this distribution center. So you have the address, the URL of the distribution center, and this is where you can find this. I will come later on what is at this time on this distribution center. So for just for the remarks, so if you need validates for the third parties, especially, you can ask. The version of the standard we already discussed. AA is okay. So it means that all the OBUs and RSUs are supposed to reach the distribution center to download those elements. That's a prerequisite. And of course, if you want some more information, don't hesitate to contact me. Regarding the test scenarios, next slide, Peter, please. Yeah, thanks. So it's important to remind that most of the scenarios will be based on what we say straightforward security, so valid RCAs, AAs, and ATs. So this is really the major part of the test scenarios. However, we want to test different things concerning security. The first thing is the untrusted RCA. We already mentioned that before. So Flanders will provide one RSU with ATs that are signed by the AA, which is also signed by the RCA that is not in the common CTL. So the AA certificates will be provided on the distribution center, but the RCA is not in the CTL. So this is where this is what the participants needs to check, is that the AA is valid but not the RCA. Revoked AA is kind of similar, but this is not the RCA but the AA itself that is not valid. And Excel already told us that Netherlands will provide one station with this revoked AA configuration. And for those who want, they can generate AATs before the TESTFEST, so that during the TESTFEST they sign the messages with expired AATs. This is optional also. Regarding the planning, so at this time we have received almost everything for the PKI elements. So we have received actually what we are missing is the UK certificates. So at this time we have 3 member states PKI elements that are already included on this distribution center. We are waiting for the UK, which should come soon. And we also received, regarding the third parties, we also received the PKI elements from O2. It's not on the distribution center yet, but it will be soon, as soon as we receive the PKI elements from the UK. So we will very soon provide all the certificates and the common CTL and the common CRL with all the PKI elements. So far, we only have O2 as a third party. Maybe there are more. If this is the case, please contact me. And by the end of the month, we should be able to have a complete repository with all the certificates and elements available for all the participants. By the 8th of March, it will be nice if all the participants confirm that they can access the distribution center and get all these certificates and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, Guillaume. And then I have some words about the interface 2, or InterCor IP-based interface. So the IF2 interface is the IP-based interface that we use to exchange messages between member states amongst each other and between member states and service providers. Each member state has at least one interface 2 server, which covers their region or a part of their region. And vehicles or applications are supposed to subscribe to, well, their own service provider, which in turn obtains the messages from one of our interface 2 servers or more interface 2 servers. Or interface 2 data exchange that uses the AMQP version 0.91, and it includes connection security using username and password and uses TLS. The security between the service provider and the vehicle or application itself, on the other hand, is completely the responsibility of that service provider. The data integrity and authenticity of the messages exchange between the IF2 server and service provider, they will be unsigned, as Guillaume already said, for testing purposes. So messages sent over ITSG5 will in most cases be signed, and the messages exchanged on IF2 will be unsigned. How to request access to the interface 2 for each member state to enable pre-testing and receiving messages before you come here. For Flanders, our contact point is InterCor Vlaanderen at wegenenverkeer.be. We aim to have 2 servers, one read-only exchange for I2V messages and one read-write exchange to enable vehicle-to-infrastructure and vehicle-to-vehicle exchanges. However, at the moment, only the I2V interface 2 is operational. The Dutch contact point is Une Kerstjes, and the Netherlands refers to the Telex InterCor IF2 deployment documentation, which is to be published on the final TESTFEST page soon. If you want to find it at the moment, it's available on the Glossa pre-hybrid TESTFEST page. The French contact point is Arsène Fouchal or one of his colleagues, to be decided a bit later. The UK contact point is currently InterCor partners only, so that will be for the second internal presentation. As said, we will plan to add some extra documentation, being the TLEX document for IF2 access for the Netherlands, the SCOOP PKI architecture and technical specifications, and some example PCAPs for ITSG5, whereas for unsigned messages, we can also provide that information through our interface 2 services. So if you request access, you obtain the messages themselves immediately. We will add the UK PKI certificate in the CTL as soon as the UK is ready. And we will also add trajectory information so you can pre-program your GPSs to know where our test sites are and which trajectory to follow to be able not to get lost on our roads. We have some participation and safety rules. Every morning during the TESTFEST, there will be a safety briefing for all people driving and participating as passenger. The attendance is mandatory. All drivers must be accompanied so that the HMI will be used by passengers, not by the driver. This is mainly because the information is either simulated or not guaranteed to be correct. Participants are to ensure that their vehicles are appropriately insured, that they have appropriate permits, and they have to obey all local traffic rules, which makes sense. Participation is non-exclusive for InterCor members, subject to registration, and the scope of participation and availability of places in that order. And you also participate to the TESTFEST at your own expenses. Participants should provide their own test vehicle, devices, and peripherals. We would really like you to have a navigation system with the provided pilot locations and/or trajectories programmed up front. We will provide a TESTFEST WhatsApp group that we will use to deliver safety information and status information of the services. So we would very much encourage you to participate in that WhatsApp group. InterCor partners are required to share their test data. Third-party participants, they are required to use the InterCor app to provide us with some basic information, and we would like to have you share your findings related to interoperability. Of course, if you want to provide us with other log files, InterCor common logging format log files or PCAP files, they will all be very much welcome, and we will use the transmitted data for research, evaluation, and reporting purposes by our InterCor partners. We don't take any responsibility in case that tests cannot be carried out according to the planning, because we do tests, we do the TESTFEST on a live motorway, and there could be unexpected events. It's still a pilot, so we could have failure of equipment or services. ITS stations are assumed to be compliant to the standards, so be able to pass the previous ETSI plug tests, not the upcoming one, because no one can guarantee that at the moment. Compliancy is the responsibility of the participant. The venue of the TESTFEST in Antwerp is the Ramada Plaza Hotel in Antwerp. Rooms for participants can be booked at a preferential rate of 89 euros per night, and to use that rate you have to mail events@ramadaplazaantwerp.com. To be able to reach the building, it's a bit hard to see, but we will from the road, but we will provide extra information of how to find the hotel. Participants with registered test vehicles will be able to park their car in the parking zones marked red. We have about 14 parking places and at sometimes more parking places available for the test vehicles. We, in case of rain or adverse weather conditions, devices and equipment can be mounted in the underground parking garage, where there's also maximum place of 14 test vehicle locations reserved. All other vehicles, well, they can use the underground pay parking, but there's only 30 extra places available. Of course, free parking in the area is available, and we will provide extra information where you can park your vehicle for free in the neighborhood. The preliminary program looks like this. On the Monday, the 25th, we start with participant registration and preliminary setup. We have a first safety briefing with opening remarks, and then we start with open road testing, with the first focus on roadworks warning, in-vehicle signage, and probe vehicle data. In Flanders and the Netherlands, but as mentioned here, it's not because we have a focus on roadworks warning, IVS, and PVD that GLOSA will not be operational. It will be operational, but maybe less supported or not so much focused on. Every evening we have a debrief at 4:30. Hours can still change, but right before the TESTFEST, you will get the definitive version of the program. On Tuesday, there's a focus day for GLOSA. So then we will cross into the Netherlands towards Helmond. And on Wednesday, there's yet again focus on roadworks warning, where we will certainly cross into the Netherlands towards Dordrecht. For all participants, there's the social dinner on Wednesday evening. It's included in the registration. People who registered earlier will get a question from us, a mail from us with the question whether they want to attend the social dinner or not. New registrations will be able to confirm it upon registration. On Thursday, during the morning, there's still some possibility of open road testing without specific focus. But the main thing on Thursday will be our conference, about which later more. Here, the conference on Thursday is Connecting European Corridors, CITS services across borders. The program is as follows. During the morning session, it's mainly about high-level vision on CITS and European cross-border interoperability, whereas in the afternoon, there's a more technically focused sessions about detailed technical results and our infrastructure rollout guidelines, which we will have some input by that time already. During the morning, we have some high-level speakers, keynote speeches by the Flemish Ministry, by the DG Move, the European Commission, and then a panel discussion by the 4 member states. After the coffee break, there's the industry perspective. At the moment, there's confirmation by Siemens Mobility and ASEA, but we're still looking into other participants. At 4 o'clock, around 4 o'clock, we have conclusions and next steps. Afterwards, we end with a closing reception where all participants are also welcome. It's possible to register for the conference right now. There will be a link in the presentation. So if you download the presentation or if you look at our website, the registration for the conference will be prominently displayed. We also have a call for TESTFEST participants. If you would be interested or be able to provide demos of your systems or drives for conference participants, if you would be able to do that, we would be very much interested. You can contact InterCor Vlaanderen at wegenenverkeer.be for that. It would be very much interesting, I think, for the conference participants to know what is the current status of all our developments. Then I hand over back to Peter Smithing for the expected outcome and the follow-up. Or are there any questions? Peter, could you check?
I checked and there are no further questions. So let's go to the next slide, please, which is, I think, only one for me. And that is just a link to the, well, it's a screenshot of the InterCor web page, where you can see the registration is still open up to February 28th. So if you have not registered yet, you can still register. And to repeat the outcome of this webinar, that is the recording and the slides will be put on this website also, so you can have a look at it or share it with your colleagues. And as we have overspent our thing already, maybe we could go to the next slide. This is thank you. We look forward to see you. And if you have no questions right now, which seems to be the case, you can always contact us here under these contact emails and ask further questions. And under www.intercore-project.eu, you will find a lot of information about the TESTFEST, as mentioned already before during the presentations. So I guess that's it for this call. So last chance for any questions. Don't be shy. Maybe we stunned you with all that information. No, it seems there are no further questions. So I would say we can close this webinar. Thank you all for your attention and looking forward to seeing you all in Antwerp on March 24 then. Thank you.